Most people don't get rich, not because they're lazy or stupid, because they follow advice built for people who already made it. Diversify early, spread your risk, don't put all your eggs in one basket. It sounds safe and responsible, the kind of thing an accountant says before retiring at 67 with 1.4 million and a bad knee. But here's the truth that no one says publicly. Diversification doesn't create wealth. Concentration does. Every self-made fortune starts with one obsession, one skill, one business, one asymmetric bet that outperforms everything else. You don't get ahead by owning a little of everything. You get ahead by owning one thing that actually moves. But this is where people blow themselves up. They keep playing the get-rich game even after they already won. They stay concentrated when they should be switching modes. They chase upside when they should be eliminating ruin. And when the drawdown hits, it doesn't just erase money, it erases years. This video is the framework, the real one wealthy people use quietly. Get rich through concentration, stay rich through diversification. Two different modes, two different stages, and mistiming that switch is the difference between financial freedom and starting over in your 40s because one bet went the wrong way. Let's break it down. Wealth doesn't grow in neat, predictable lines. It grows in spikes, violent, uneven surges where one decision, one asset, or one skill suddenly pulls so far ahead that it dwarfs everything else you've ever done. That spike is always the product of concentration. No one becomes wealthy because they owned a little of everything. They become wealthy because something they went deep on finally paid off. A business that scaled, a skill the market was screaming for but no one provided, an asset they understood better than the crowd, or a moment of asymmetric upside they were positioned to capture. This is why the slow, diversified path feels like financial purgatory. It demands decades of sacrifice, microscopic gains, and quality of life that feels like discipline for the sake of discipline. Yes, you might reach 7 figures eventually, but usually when your knees hurt and your energy is gone, and your youth has been traded for safety. Concentration, by contrast, creates acceleration. It rewards depth, not balance. It rewards expertise, not hedging. It rewards risk, not caution. And that's why every meaningful financial breakthrough, every first million, comes from something that wasn't diversified at all. You don't create wealth by spreading yourself thin. You create wealth by allowing one thing to dominate. That is the path people misunderstand. Diversification is a wealth preservation tool. If you try to use it to build wealth, you end up slow, frustrated, and perpetually behind someone who simply picked a lane and pushed harder. Once you understand how wealth is actually built, the 80-20 rule becomes unavoidable. 80% of your eventual net worth will come from one concentrated source, the same dominant spike that carried you past everyone else. The other 20% comes later, from diversification. Once you're close enough to your freedom number that protecting the downside matters more than the swing for the fences. This is where people sabotage themselves. They try to diversify too early, before anything in their life has reached escape velocity. They dilute their edge before it even compounds. Or they do the opposite. They stay concentrated long after they've already won, refusing to shift modes because the aggressive strategy that built their wealth feels like the only strategy that works. Both mistakes create the same outcome: lost years. The truth is simple. Concentration builds the engine, diversification preserves the engine. You don't balance your way to financial independence. You balance once financial independence is close enough that one bad drawdown could push it out of reach. That's why the 80% threshold matters so much. When you're within striking distance of your number, it's no longer rational to maximize upside. The game changes. At that point, the smartest move is to lock in the win, kill the possibility of ruin, and let the rest of your life compound without fear. This is where most people drift for years. They don't know what enough looks like, so they never know when to change strategies. They chase upside forever because they never define the moment where winning actually becomes possible. Your number isn't about status, luxury, or signaling. It's about the life you want to live, your environment, your pace, your responsibilities, your freedom. It's a lifestyle target, not a flex. And it's personal. For some people, freedom means a beach town. For others, a city condo, a mountain cabin, a suburb where the kids can run around. The point is that you have to define it because no one else lives your life, carries your cost, or cares about your freedom the way you do. And once you have your number, the rule is brutally simple. You start diversifying at roughly 80% of that target. Not when you feel scared, not when the market gets weird, not when the news tells you to panic. The switch happens when you're mathematically close enough that a single catastrophic drawdown could push freedom years out of reach. The 80% mark is the trigger that separates wealth from the people who almost made it. Because at that point, it's not about maximizing returns. It's about eliminating ruin. The difference between almost free and actually free is not more upside. It's removing the possibility of going backwards. When you hit that threshold, you have one job: secure the win so your future becomes inevitable. Once you've locked in your number, your entire psychology changes. You stop making decisions from fear, urgency, or desperation. You're no longer trying to escape something. You're building from stability. And that shift, going from survival to control, is what creates the second wealth curve. The curve where your best ideas finally have room to breathe because your baseline is secured. This is a part nobody talks about. Once your freedom is guaranteed, taking risks becomes easier, not harder. You're not betting your life anymore. You're betting excess. You're playing offense from a position where loss is annoying, not fatal. And that's why people who lock in their financial independence so often end up far richer than they planned. They're no longer clouded by the emotional noise that ruins most decisions. Greed, panic, FOMO, envy, revenge trading, the urge to make it faster. Without those voices, your judgment sharpens instantly. But here's the dark side. This is where people lose everything all over again. They get one good win and think the universe owes them two. They leverage the house, they double down on the same play that worked once, they chase the next high because they're addicted to the feeling of being right. And that's how someone can become wealthy in their 30s and broke in their 40s. They never learned the difference between the game that gets you rich and the game that keeps you rich. When your freedom is locked in, your job is simple. You keep that bucket untouchable and you build the second curve with the money you can afford to burn. That's the separation between people who stay wealthy and the people who have a rich phase they spend the rest of their lives reminiscing about. Lock in your base, then build from abundance, not pressure. Diversification isn't about owning everything. It's about eliminating the one outcome that ruins your life. And once you're close to your number, the goal isn't to get fancy, it's to get survivable. That means your preservation bucket can only contain assets with controlled, predictable drawdowns. Assets that can fall but not collapse. Assets that recover, not evaporate. So what does intelligent diversification actually look like? It starts with cutting the risk that carried you this far. If your wealth came from one dominant position, crypto, a tech stock, your own company, you scale that exposure down. Not because you suddenly doubt it, but because you can't let your future depend on its mood swings. Half of it goes out, sometimes more. The point is to take fragility off the table. From there, you build around stability. Broad market equities, boring real estate you control, bonds that don't shoot the lights out but don't nuke your portfolio either. Cash buffer that let you sleep and give you opportunity. You don't need complexity, you need reliability. This mix becomes your never touch bucket. The part that funds your life, protects your freedom, and buys you time to make better decisions. And then comes the secret most people don't understand. Diversification doesn't eliminate your upside. It frees your upside, because once your base is secure, you can take all the risk you want with your excess money. You can chase innovation, build businesses, go deep on the next thing, and swing as hard as you want, because the worst case scenario no longer threatens your survival. That's intelligent diversification. Not owning everything, owning enough of the right things, so you never go backwards again. This is the part where most people stop. They hear the framework, concentrate early, diversify late, and think they've got it. That's where people get stuck. Not because the strategy is complicated, but because two questions decide whether it works at all. What exactly do you concentrate on, and how do you stop yourself from self-destructing once you start winning? That is what I'm breaking down for my Patreon community. The parts reserved for people who aren't trying to be financially responsible, but financially free. I'll walk you through the process of finding your asymmetric lane, the one place where your effort compounds instead of evaporates. No cliches, no follow your passion, just a clear audit that forces you to see where your real upside is. And then I break down the psychology of keeping what you built. The emotional traps, the pressure shifts, the boredom, the ego spikes, all the invisible forces that quietly destroy people after their first win. If you understand that section, you stop repeating the rise and blow up cycle most successful people never escape. If you want the part that makes this strategy real, the part that turns this video from an idea into a roadmap, it's waiting for you inside. Click the link in the description below. Great, now you understand the real wealth equation. You know why concentration builds your first spike of freedom and why diversification protects it once you're close to the finish line. But there's another piece most people never think about, and it's the part that silently determines whether you can actually use the strategy in real life, your relationship with liquidity. Because you can't take asymmetric bets, the kind that accelerate your life, if all your money is locked in a safety bucket that was never designed for anything except standing still. And that's why the next idea matters so much. It's the one that explains why traditional emergency funds keep you cautious, slow, and unable to take advantage of the very opportunities that concentration requires. So if you want to understand how to build liquidity that works for you, not against you, and how to position yourself to actually act when upside appears, click on the emergency fund video next. It's the missing piece that makes this entire framework come alive.